with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, I want to bring to the line none other than our very, very special guest, the Gorilla Economist. V, are you there?
China, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege to be speaking to every single person that's on this call. Most of you folks that, some of you have heard of me, some of you haven't. For those that haven't, my background, just as China said, I've worked for some of the largest investment banks in the UK. I've also worked for some of the top commodity trading firms. I was, taken under wings by one of the individuals on the planet in the trading world, in the brokerage firms that I used to work with back in Zurich, Switzerland. So that's a little bit of my financial background. What happened to me is very interesting. I began to see a lot of things happening, especially certain things that we would create policy in the city of London, and then we would see it rolled out to Wall Street. And I knew right then and there, folks, that what Wall Street and the city of London was concocting was outright criminal fraud. Fraud that should have landed most of these guys in jail. And then when the 2008 collapse occurred, a lot of us saw it coming. We knew it was inevitable. And when that happened, we've seen what happened to this country. That was the first stage of the collapse we're in. Most people, that I talk to, they always ask me. I get emails, thousands of emails per week, from all over the world. Hey V, when's the stock market going to crash? When's the collapse happening? Why is the Dow at 18,000 points? What's going on? Well, folks, here's the truth. The truth is we are already in a collapse. Okay, we're already in a collapse. Let me explain some numbers to you. If you believe that the unemployment rate that this government puts out is 5.5 to 5.6%, I have a bridge on Mars to sell you. The real unemployment rate, let's just talk some real numbers here, okay? We have 93 million Americans permanently out of the workforce. In other words, they tried to find a job, they can't find one, and they gave up, okay? 10.6 million are on unemployment benefits, meaning they're getting a check every month, and that check is about to run out. 52 million are on food stamps, not the 47 or 48, but 52 million are on food stamps. 101 million Americans are receiving sort of welfare just to make ends meet. You take those numbers that I've just given you, and granted, there is some overlap. We're looking at anywhere between 51 to 52% of the country is effectively unproductive. That, my friends, is a recipe for disaster. You don't need a PhD in economics to know that something is seriously wrong. And so the question is, you have this massive amount of data showing how bad things really are. Foreclosures are through the roof. Mortgage applications are at a record low. We have massive housing inventory, massive issues with credit till this day, liquidity crisis with banks. Banks are going insolvent. There's a solvency crisis. So why in the world is Wall Street? Why in the world Wall Street raking in record profits? Why in the world is the Dow Jones Industrial at 18,000 points? Simple. It is a manipulated market. Back in 2006, what we rolled out to the world was a thing called high-frequency trading. Okay? And high-frequency trading simply works like this. A trading computer is able to trade in and out of a stock 10,000 times in a second, actually in milliseconds. Meaning, if you're sitting at your home, you got your E-Trade account, you got your Jones Trade, whatever the heck you use, Charles Schwab, whatever, and you see Apple going for 125, you say, hey, you know what, I'm going to buy some Apple stock. And by the time you hit enter, the trading algo computers at the trading houses in Wall Street have already detected that you might be sitting in Kansas or in Idaho or in Texas or in Atlanta. And just because you hit enter to buy some stocks, all of a sudden the trading computers recognize that they've already moved into that price point with that particular stock you want. They've resold it and sold it multiple times before your buy order even gets there. In other words, folks, the market is rigged. We rigged it back in 2006. So 18,000 points is a fictitious number. Most of it is two things. Number one, it's companies buying and selling and buying their own stocks, number one. Number two, it's high-frequency trading computers. 80%, almost 80% trades done on Wall Street today are done computer to computer with no human involvement. None whatsoever. Okay? It is designed that way to give you an impression that we have a functioning free market. There's nothing functioning about this market, and there's nothing free about it, folks. Okay? This has caused massive problems. And in 2008, we got a good taste of it. And the world got smacked in the face with reality. You see, the reason why you're on this call is because there's a real economic situation that's happening. Now, you might say to yourself, well, V, here's the deal. Things like this have happened before. It's just a business cycle. Everything will just come back, and, it'll be, peaches and cream and unicorns and rainbows. Everything will be all right. There's only one problem with that. See, we got away with it before, folks, because we were the quote-unquote world reserve currency. And we had something nifty called the petrodollar. And it was great. Just so long as every oil that's being sold, every barrel of oil sold has to be priced in dollars. So that saved our rear ends. And the dollar being world reserve currency, meaning if Ecuador wanted to buy food from Uruguay, it's got to first buy dollars and then do the trade. So Uncle Sam got a little off the top on each single trade. And it was fine. The world had no problem with it because at that time the U.S. was a responsible country and the dollar was as good as gold. Well, fast forward to today, and the world realized that America's fiscal policy, America's economy, is run by a bunch of cocaine-fueled drug addicts in Wall Street who spend money like a bunch of drunken on shore leave. Then they started realizing that these lunatics in Wall Street work in very, very close proximity with the sub-zoological experiments in Washington, D.C., and together Wall Street and D.C. concoct ways to keep this Ponzi scheme going. And the world is like, wait a minute, we're buying your debt. And you all know this. China used to be a major buyer of U.S. debt, and it was fine. China would buy trillions and trillions. They at one point had $3 trillion of U.S. debt. They would hold it because the dollar was as good as gold. And the Russians did the same thing. They've had trillions of dollars of U.S. debt, and the Saudis and the Japanese and everybody else out there. The world had no problem. But now all of a sudden, Wall Street is getting bailed out left and right, and D.C. has ordered the Federal Reserve, folks, and if you don't know what a central bank is a private institution that prints the currency and dictates fiscal policy for a country. It's insane. So the Federal Reserve is about as federal as Federal Express. Okay? So let's not get that twisted. Now, all of a sudden, the Fed is printing money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week like it's going out of style. They are not ceasing. And then the countries of the world woke up and said, wait a minute, we're holding all these dollars, we're holding all these U.S. debt, and you guys are devaluing your own currency by printing it to oblivion. We don't need this. We need to find a solution. Otherwise, we're going to be left holding the bag alongside the rest of you. And all of a sudden, starting in about 2008, right after, China starts dumping. Japan starts dumping. The Russians start dumping. Everybody started exiting out of the dollar. The U.S. government senses this, and all of a sudden they artificially manipulate the value of the dollar to be at a high rate when it shouldn't. It has no business being at the rate and the strength that it is right now. No business whatsoever, and it's bolstered by zero fundamentals. Okay?
Let me stop you.
Go ahead.
Let me stop you. And let me just say this.
Yep.
Throughout this interview session, I may do this. I don't want you to think I'm being rude, but I can tell you right now that our listeners are so intrigued with what you're saying, and some of them have no idea that this is going on, and it's a lot of information. I hear the passion through your voice. I know that you're very educated on what's going on. The call that I heard you on, or when I listened to a video of you, you talked about some of the connections that you had. You talked about some of the things that your counterparts had done that were very, very wealthy that the average person could not do. What you are sharing right now sounds like it affects every single thing. A lot of people, of course, have money in 401ks and IRAs, and they're planning for retirement, and they're planning to put money away for grandkids and kids. What you are sharing right now, what does that mean for the average person? And what should people actually be doing about the information that you are sharing that they may never have an opportunity to hear again?
Got it. Yeah, that's a great question. What's happening right now in the world, folks, is the world is rearranging itself into trade zones. And these trade zones have gotten together and said, you know what, we're going to trade amongst ourselves using the Chinese yuan, using hard assets, using our own currency, using anything but the dollar. In other words, there's a major global party that's happening, and the United States is not invited. Okay? In fact, we're being isolated.
Wow.
The major trade zones that are occurring, like the Eurasian trade zone, China's rebuilding what's called the New Silk Road. Okay? These trade zones, folks, comprise 80% of global GDP, 70% of global trade, 55 to 60% of global manufacturing, and the United States is not involved. So what's happening is this, okay? The U.S. dollar, because of all the printing, has become the most toxic asset on the planet. Your country and your government has written into law that they are going to devalue and destroy the dollar. Don't believe me? Look up the Dodd-Frank Act. Why is the Dodd-Frank Act there? The Dodd-Frank Act was passed in January, stating that they're going to bail in the banks. What does bail in mean? It's the opposite of bailout. In other words, they're going to use your money sitting in brokerages, sitting in bank accounts, thinking it's all safe, and they're going to use that to bail in the financial institutions, your money, and then you'll get an IOU saying they'll pay you back. And
let's pause there.
9 years.
Let's pause. I think this is so important, and most people have no idea what a bail-in is. They do remember the bailout that took place in 2008 when banks were being bailed out and these Fortune 500 companies were being bailed out. Let's expound for just a moment, because I think this is too important, and so many people are going to be affected by it, and they don't know. Can they really and legally bail in and use the depositors' money to bail in these banks? I mean, is that legal?
It's perfectly legal, because this is what I was talking about with the collusion between Wall Street and Washington, D.C. You see, folks, the banking industry unleashed over 5,000 lobbyists to make sure that the Dodd-Frank Act was passed. The Dodd-Frank Act was 30,000 pages. It's 10 times bigger than Obamacare, 10 times bigger than the Patriot Act, and that means each congressman had about 5 lobbyists, 2 congressmen. They spent $32 billion to make sure this was passed. And what does a bail-in look like? Well, let's ask the people of Cyprus, okay? When the people of Cyprus got into a banking crisis, they woke up the next day and they found out that over 40 to 60% of their checking accounts were wiped out. Gone. That's a bail-in, okay? And they've changed the laws that now that you deposit your money into a checking account, you are what's called and considered an unsecured creditor, meaning you are a lender of last resort. So if the bank goes belly up, you're the last person getting paid. Everybody else will get paid during a bankruptcy liquidation of the bank. You are left holding the bag. That's what it means. So in other words, folks, the government knows what's coming. Otherwise, they wouldn't pass the Dodd-Frank Act. They wouldn't allow.
Now, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, V, and you can continue. Are you saying Dodd-Frank, F-R-A-N-K and D-O-T first, Dodd-Frank, or what are you saying so people can actually go?
Dodd-Frank, D-O-D-D, Dodd. Senator Chris Dodd and Barney Frank. They're the guys who passed that. The law is named after them. It was actually written by lobbyists. It's got these 2 idiots' names on it. They have no clue. They just use their names to pass it through. They're paid on the back end. That's how politics really works in this country, anyway. But so that's the act. It's called the Dodd-Frank Act.
Okay, go ahead, continue. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. So what happens, folks, is that the world is moving into these massive trade zones, and your currency is being devalued. So in other words, there's no hedge of protection. Now in 2008, we saw 401ks become 101ks. Okay, And when this whole entire thing is going to pop, because your Ponzi scheme, and that's what we have running here. We have a Ponzi scheme, and your Ponzi scheme works just so long as you have a willing fool, just so long you have a quote unquote investor who's going to keep buying into the scheme. But as soon as you run out of willing idiots to sign into the scheme, it's over. Well, these days, folks, the United States has pretty much run out of people that want to buy it. You got a few countries like Japan who's basically on a suicide mission, financially speaking. That's about it. You look at who's the number one buyer of the United States debt right now. The number one buyer. It's not China. It's not Russia. It's the Federal Reserve. So technically, we're buying our own debt. Now, you tell me how long is that juggling act going to continue? It can't. It can't. And the rest of the world sees it.
Let me ask you this, because this is, extremely alarming. And guys, let me put a disclaimer out here. The language on this call is pretty strong. All adults are here, but it's too important to sugarcoat. We cannot sugarcoat. Just know that there is a solution. I can tell you right now, when we're talking about, all of these countries, I know that in the Chinese language, there is no word for crisis. They only see opportunity. Many of you who follow me know that I always talk about one of my greatest mentors, Dr. Miles Monroe. And though we own the late, great Dr. Miles Monroe, and though we only spent a little bit of time together, it was so valuable. And in one of our coaching sessions, he said, listen, in the Chinese language, there is no word for crisis. The word for crisis is the same for opportunity. So as you're listening to these share with you what's going on, what's more important is that you place yourself on the right side of this thing so that you are not negatively affected, but so that you can protect yourself. So, V, let me ask you, from a timeline standpoint, I've heard of the collapse of the dollar. Some of the listeners on the call are educated and have heard of this information. Some people they don't even know what's going on. They have no idea. What is the timeline that we're looking at for the dollar no longer being the U.S. dollar or the world reserve currency? I know you predicted a lot of things that have already come to pass. What do you guys see there?
This is the hardest part, because the collapse of the dollar, a lot of the guys that I've spoken to in some of the top firms, some of the top researchers, and some of the top think tanks, we're picking a date around 2017, anywhere between 2017, we're looking for some major issues to occur. One of the things I've spoken about since July of 2014 is that the dollar is going to be completely undermined by the end of 2015 as the world reserve currency. That is already happening. Okay, so by the end of 2015, folks, let me tell you this. We entered the year 2000 with the world using the dollar in 75 to 80% of all global trade. Today, it's less than 40. It's about 40% or so, okay, by every single major firm that tracks it. This is being reduced even more because you have, again, these major trade zones spurred on by China. When I tell most people about China, they're like, well, the Chinese need us. We're the ones who buy their junk. Wrong. When I ask people what is the biggest sector in the Chinese economy, most people think manufacturing. That answer is wrong. It was manufacturing. It's banking. Okay, and they're buying up and funding things that you would not believe. And the Chinese and the Russians and the rest of the world have the solution that I'm going to discuss. That I'm going to tell you guys later what that solution is. And their solution is to basically inoculate themselves or cushion themselves or protect themselves from this coming dollar collapse. They're not going to go down with the ship. They've decided they're going to survive. They're going to be viable on the other side of this collapse as the dollar hyperinflates, as we head towards hyperinflation in this country.
Now let's pause 1 second. You said two dates. You said that based on the experts and those that have researched this, they're seeing somewhere around 2017, and some of the listeners may be saying, thank God I have a little bit of time. But then you said before the end of 2015, the dollar will be completely undermined. Can you distinct the difference of what that means?
Absolutely. This thing is in stages. Okay, and this collapse is in stages. But when we're in the final stage, that's when things will accelerate and things will move very, very rapidly. So by the end of 2015, the dollar will be completely undermined. In other words, see, folks, in the last few years, the United States has been absolutely embarrassed on the foreign stage, in the world stage. It has been embarrassed. The dollar has been embarrassed. The United States economy has been embarrassed. In other words, we've been exposed. We've been vetted as the source of all the financial fraud. We've been vetted as the source of a lot of the world's problems. Okay, a lot of these coups that are going around the world, foreign countries are starting to figure out, wait a minute, it's not some maniacal group here. It's actually, this group is connected to the U.S. government, and they're doing this to better themselves. People are starting to wake up. Okay, a few years ago, a couple of countries got together. Actually, it was almost 200 countries got together with the United Nations, and what they wanted to do is create what's called a global currency reset, because there was so much debt, $1.4 quadrillion of debt that is clogging up the system and has become toxic. So they need to purge the debt. So the answer was a global currency reset, where every country's currency will be based upon the assets and the debt it has. Well, the United States said, no, we can't be a part of that deal, because our real debt, folks, is not $18 trillion. When you count all the entitlement programs and whatnot and unfunded liabilities, we're at about $80 trillion. Then when you count all the derivative debt and all the bail-ins and bailouts that we've done, we're looking at about $380 trillion, close to $400 trillion is what this country owes. The U.S. says we can't sign on to that, so what did the U.S. do? Well, we went ahead and we started a war in the Ukraine, and then we blamed the Russians. Hey, the Russians are invading. This is the kind of nonsense that we do. Why? Because we are a dying empire. We are doing what we can to stay relevant. And apart from blowing things up and blackmailing and carving up third world countries, we don't have a viable economic solution to pull ourselves out. We're following the same maniacal suicide policy that the British did, and it's not working. So we're going the way of many other great empires, and it's not the end of the world, folks. It's history repeating itself. We are in the midst of the biggest transition.
Expound there. You said something, and I hear it a lot. I've even heard some experts call us the ancient Israel. Okay, and maybe that's in a different sense. But you said this is like history repeating itself. So that means that this has happened before. Some people think, oh my goodness, let me get off this call. These people are crazy. This could clearly never happen. And they don't even know that it has happened before already. Can you expound there? And then let's go into hyperinflation that you talked about, because some people don't know what that means for them in their pockets.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with let's look at this. Let's look at the business cycle in general, okay? When you look at what's happening, and a lot of people say, well, it's cyclical, V. Well, it's not cyclical. The problem is systemic. And systemically, the whole system has rotted through, and it's on the verge of collapse, number one. Number two, when you look at history, and history repeating itself, any country that has hyperinflated its currency or went full fiat, and folks, we have been using what's called a fiat currency, basically a currency that's printed by edict, given value by edict from the government itself, and that edict has been stating that this dollar has value, but it's backed up by nothing. In other words, it's printed up on thin air. And we've been on this fiat currency thing since 1971 when Nixon took us off the gold standard, okay? Fiat currency, and any country that has utilized it throughout history, has lasted about 40 years of fiat. Empires, such as ourselves, okay, and we are an empire. Don't let the marketing and the propaganda make you think otherwise. We are an empire. What else do you call a country with bases in 154 other countries globally? All right, okay, so that's what we are. Empires such as ourselves last about 200 years or so, and that's it. Okay, so that's the deal of what's going on globally. And when we've gotten to the point of where we are right now, and folks, I want to remind you, go back into history. Look at the Weimar Republic. Look at how Germany was right after World War I. Okay, the Deutschmark was on parity with the dollar. Okay, and what occurred was that their economy went into hyperinflation. And if you wanted to mail out a postage stamp, if you wanted to mail a letter at that time, you're spending about 12.6 million Deutschmarks to mail out a postage stamp. Well, put a postage stamp on a letter and mail it out. So this is what's happening. See, folks, when the final pieces of the puzzle, when the final stones on this global trade zone is put together, and the U.S. will be isolated because it's not part of anything, because people don't want to deal with us anymore. They're tired of it. They're tired of the invasions. They're tired of the fraud. And when they are done, and when China and Russia put the final caps to cornerstone on this whole entire thing, you're going to see a lot of those dollars that are held abroad come flooding back in. And when they do, it will happen rapidly. You see, China, the thing with the hyperinflation, nobody sees it coming. It is the grim reaper. You wake up one day, gas is $20 a gallon. A loaf of bread is $10, and then it hits you, and it moves and works rapidly. So it's like a patient that's got terminal cancer. Once it's gone terminal, it will kill the organism. It will kill the patient very, very quickly.
Wow, we hear that on these calls. We talk about hyperinflation, but it's in some countries around the world. I know in Bermuda, their gas is about $9 a gallon. I know one of our leaders just come back from Bahamas, I believe it's Abaco, and the prices were sky high. You know, that seems, it seems like, can that really happen? You know, can you wake up one morning and go into the gas station and it's $10 a gallon, especially with a bit of a break that we recently had when gas prices were as low as the high, maybe $1.90. I mean, is that real? Is that something that we should be expecting?
It's 1,000% reality. And folks, one of the things I'm telling you, this is not conjecture. This is not I'm sitting around making things up. This is reality. This is hard numbers. This is data. And I look at the data day in, day out, day in, day out. And when you begin to start getting all the numbers together, the real numbers don't lie. The real numbers don't lie. Mm-hmm. And when you see them compiled, it starts to paint the picture. And when you start to see the pattern emerge, you know unequivocally, without a shadow of a doubt, how the story is going to end. It's going to end badly. The majority of Americans are going. It's not if, it's when, okay? The majority of Americans are going to lose all of their wealth. All of it.
Let's switch gears, okay? The ones who will not lose their wealth, I'm sure, is because they're either exposed to information and, more importantly, they took advantage of it and they did something about it. Let's shift gears and talk about a solution. And I know that we can't necessarily give out advice. Tell me some of the things that you're doing. Some of the things, because over the next 18 months, first of all, before we go into that, over the next 18 months, what do you think we are going to see roll out? I mean, are we going to experience hyperinflation over the next 18 months? I know you clearly said by the end of 2017, the dollar is completely collapsed, and you know, we're already in the third phase, I believe you said, of this five-phase series here. So over the next 18 months, what can we expect to see in your opinion?
In the next 18 months is this. We're going to see, especially, you know, one of the things I've been predicting, people need to watch this. Watch the Greek situation with the Eurozone. Once Greece exits, okay, folks, let me tell you this. Okay, we talk. I got to give you guys a geopolitical basis to work with this, so you guys can see the picture clearly. We talk about the G7. These are the seven countries: America, Britain, France, Italy, Spain, the UK. Okay, you got the G7. Okay, and these are the European countries and the US basically. And there are 7 vibrant economies. Blah blah blah. Right. The G7, folks. You look at America. You look at Europe. These are a bunch of. It's a club of insolvent nations. It's a club of debtors. That's all they are. They're debtors. They're all broke. They're all insolvent. Okay, and these guys are trying to stay relevant. When the Eurozone starts clipping away, which is going to happen, when Greece goes, and I predicted that Greece will go right into the arms of the Russians and the Chinese, and it's happening. It's happening. Today, we're going to get some sort of more information on this as it proceeds. That's going to set off bank failures all across Europe. That's going to set off bank failures in Japan, which will set off bank failures here, because all these insolvent countries have one thing in common. They're obsessed with paper. They create paper, and they think paper has value. They forget that paper only has the value that it's printed on, in reality, at the end of the day, okay? You look at, so that's one thing. The second thing that's going to happen is this. You're going to see the Eurasian trade zone come to be. Google it when you get home. Eurasian trade zone. Read every article on it. Type in new code. Read every article on it. And if that don't send shivers down your spine, you don't have a pulse and you're not aware of what's going on, okay? Because that's going to paint to you a picture of a coming trade alliance globally. Okay, people probably heard the term BRICS, BRICS, BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Okay, people think that those countries are just 5 countries that decided to come together in a trade zone. No, when you hear the word BRICS, you do a mistake to limit it to the 5 nations that make up that acronym. BRICS is about 105 countries. So these trade zones all throughout the world are hundreds of countries coming together to trade amongst themselves. As you listen to my voice, 25 of the largest economies have already set up currency swaps to use the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency for trade, and the Chinese are ready to bring that on board. And to protect their currency, China will back the yuan with gold. Same thing with the Russians. Same thing with the rest of the world. That's what you're going to see emerge. That's going to put an absolute shockwave into the American stock market. You're going to start seeing major declines that will occur in the market, that even the high-frequency computers will try their best to hide the real declines and the sell-offs. This is what's happening. The third thing you're going to see, a lot of prominent people will be leaving the country. This will be the rats leaving the sinking ship, so to speak. That's already starting to happening on a small scale. That will continue to accelerate in the next 18 months. So these are a lot of things that we need to watch for. It's a dangerous time to be alive, but it's also an exciting time to be alive because, as you said, it's not crisis. There's opportunities here.
Lee, let me ask you something. You are an extremely wise man, not just with the intelligence of what's going on, but you've protected yourself in a way that, guys, when I looked for a picture of V online as I promoted this call, I could not find one picture. I had to literally call him and say, hey, V, haven't been able to find a picture of you. Can you send me a picture? Can you expound for a second? And then we're going to go into what you are doing to protect your family with the information that you have. You know, we don't want to necessarily tell other people what to do, but I need to know what someone like you is doing to protect yourself. Why is it that I can't find a picture of you?
Great question. Even those that have my real name, okay, I've Googled myself. You can't find me even if you knew what my real name was. You can't find me anywhere. That's number one. Number two, in terms of my picture, and I go by the name, is simply because to protect myself for safety reasons and protect my family. There's a lot of information that I've broken, some serious in the last 2 years, things that only insider would know. I've been privy. I was the guy who called out that, and I said this, and this is going to sound a little scary for y'all, but I'm going to say it anyway. Back in 2012 of November, and I said on November 10th, I think November 20th, I said before this whole thing comes apart, you're going to start hearing about a lot of bankers mysteriously dying. And then I said in January 10th of 2013, I said January 2014 and November of 2013. But in 2014 in January, I said there are hit teams in operation in Wall Street, and you're going to have some major executives drop dead. They're going to rule it a suicide. One by one, they're going to start cleaning up house because these are the guys who know what the fraud is, and these are the type of guys that if they were to go to a court and be seen, that these were the types of guys that would be privy to the type of fraud and the information. You're going to start seeing them dead. And I said there's going to be about 43 bankers that are going to be dropping dead. Some of them will be major executives. And folks, as we say, there's about a little over 50 to 60 bankers that have quote unquote mysteriously died. I mean, guys drowning in 3 inches of water. In fact, when I gave my warning on a Canadian radio show on January the 10th, 2014, within a few days later, William Brooksmith, who is the chief financial officer, I believe it was, and one of the top directors for Deutsche Bank, hung himself in his London flat with his feet still touching the floor. Okay, I can go on and on. Gabriel McGee, Morgan Chase, right after this guy's 33-year-old, head of the trading platform, head of the trading desk in JP Morgan in the city of London. He was thrown out of the 33rd floor of the skyrise. Right after that, Ryan Crane, who's friends with Gabriel McGee, he's also head of a trade desk right here in JP Morgan in New York, dropped dead from a heart attack. He's 1 year old, or 36 years old, okay, in his own house, sitting around, just drops dead. The Citibank executive, major guy, his name is Brian Williams or something. I don't remember, but anyway, he was sitting in his $5 million apartment in Manhattan, and somebody came in and wrote, and the cops ruled it a suicide. And quickly, all these things are happening: suicide. No, these guys are being whacked. I mean, if you got let's look at any profession. If you got 15 proctologists that mysteriously dropped dead in a matter of weeks, that'd be an investigation. But you got over 50 to close to 60 bankers that are dead, all in top financial positions, and no investigation, nothing.
Oh
globally.
My goodness,
Okay,
that's crazy. So this is some of the reasons that you
yeah.
very well. I mean, we're in a phase where everybody's doing selfies and undies, and of course they don't have the information you have, but you know we're living in a time where people are big on that. You know.
Yeah, it's folks. You got to understand what Facebook and all the social media stuff is. This is a data mining operation. You're basically keeping a dossier on yourself. You're basically posting pictures of what you look like, your kids, your family, what you do, your political leanings, who your friends are, what your stands on, your points of view. I mean, my God, Hitler, or the communists would have loved to have a file like this back in the day. You're keeping your own file on yourself. It's great. So this is what happens, folks. One of the things I always say is this: in a collapse, what happens when a country collapses? Its security apparatus that is designed to look at enemies abroad, all of a sudden the security apparatus begins to look for enemies within. Okay, and we see that. We're seeing the gearing up with the police. We're seeing the gearing up with the government. I mean, it's no secret. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, they buy 2, 3, 4 billion rounds of ammunition. Why do they need that much ammunition? Well, that's more ammunition than there was fired. That's like 20 times more ammunition than what was fired in the entire Iraq War. Okay, so why do they need all this? Why? Because they know what's coming. Jade Helm, Google it. What is that all about? Massive, training exercise. Why? They know what's coming. In every collapse, there's going to be a rough spot, and we always tell people within every major firm that I've spoken with, you need to survive and stay viable for the first 90 days of it, because then order is restored. But once order is restored, you need to have something available that allows you to buy and sell and trade and procure, okay, and get things. Weimar Germany, when they hyperinflated their currency, folks, let me tell you this: a couple of smart people had gold on them. I'm going to give you this as an example. Back then, 3 grams of gold bought you a house. 5 ounces.
Wow.
Five ounces of gold bought you a hotel.
Wow. Let's go into that right now. V, it's no secret. For the listeners that are on the call, he's recently joined a movement that I'm a part of, that I'm very passionate about, because I believe anybody who is working for a living and they're receiving dollars based on what we just heard on this call, you can clearly see that you definitely want to secure yourself and not look to the government. I actually believe that we're coming very close to a time where the government assistance, like you talked about, food stamps and all these assistance, are just going to go away. And that's going to be it's going to be pandemonium here. I'm saving in gold personally. I encourage anybody that I know to save their money in gold. This has nothing to do with business. I believe that from a standpoint of survival, if the dollar collapses, rather when it collapses, and you don't have anything that you can buy food with, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Why did you decide to join us with Karatbars, guys? And we'll tell you a little bit about who we are in Karatbars. We're actually a company, an e-commerce company that's headquartered out of Stuttgart, Germany. Germany's laws are so strict that before they can even launch a business, they have to cross all of their T's and dot all of their I's. I know you're not going to put your name on something with the type of insight and information you have without completely checking out. Why did you decide to align yourself with us here in Karatbars?
That's a great question. When I took a look at the company, I was blown away, and I'll tell you why I was blown. To this day, I deal with I'm partnered with certain brokerage companies. Okay, one of the big companies that I deal with have a clientele base of over 300,000 clients. Okay, and they do large custodial accounts. What that means is this. Okay, when a client calls me up and says, "Hey V, I got 5 million, 7 million, 10 million sitting in an account. I'm scared of what the heck's going on in the U.S. The U.S. policies are really, they're ridiculous. I need to preserve my wealth." So when a wealthy person calls, they don't want to keep their gold in the U.S. because why? It can be confiscated. Okay, so they don't want to put millions of dollars of gold into a vault in the United States. They're worried about that. So, and if they can't hold, it's another crazy thing to hold millions of dollars of gold in your house. Having small fractional gold, you can get away with it. That's the benefit of it. So they would call me, and what we do is this: we go to what's called, we work in what's called a good delivery system, and a good delivery system, and this is something you folks can Google. A good delivery system is a relationship between the brokerage firm, bullion banks, refiners, and vaulting companies. So when we get an order for, let's say, $5 million to be stored in gold, we We take that $5 million order, we go directly to what's called an LBMA refiner, London Bullion Market Association refiner, meaning this best, purest refineries, the best refineries on the planet. In other words, there are thousands of refineries out there that I think there's less than 50 that are LBMA certified. Okay, LBMA refineries are what countries buy their gold from. China wants to buy gold, or Russia wants to buy gold, or India wants to buy gold. They go to LBMA certified refiners. They're not going to go to Jimmy John's, coin and carry down the street. It ain't happening. Okay, this is for sovereigns, which are countries, and large institutional investors. And then once we get the gold, we vault it at a private vault. We usually use vaults in Switzerland and or Singapore, and even in Panama. Okay, so we vault it in those countries because they have the strictest laws in terms of protection, and it's insured, it's bonded, the whole 9 yards. It's serial numbered. All right, so that's the beauty of an LBMA. Everything is serial number, meaning that serial number is the gold's pedigree. You put that serial number into a computer at a bank or a vault, and they can tell where that gold was mined, where it was refined, and who was the original owner. It's serial number. It's all put away. So then that client's account is protected, and it's outside because it's called a good delivery system. It's outside of the banking system, meaning if there's any bank collapses or bank failures or a country goes a belly up or so your nation's economy implodes, your gold is still safe and secure. Okay, that's the beauty of it. All right. So then, if the client after this, let's say a few months later, the client says, hey, you know what, that $5 million in gold, I want $100,000 of it. Well, we're able to that gold to a bullion bank and have that money wired directly into their account within 24 to 48 hours in the currency of their choosing. So it gives our clients incredible flexibility. I was blown away with Karatbars because it does the same thing before the average person on the street, okay? In other words, when dealing with these brokerages, folks, the minimum amount is $150,000 if you want to open up an account. With Karatbars, I was blown away with the fact that they are using LBMA certified gold. In other words, you take a Karatbar, there's a serial number right there. That if you punch that serial number in, it tells you where that gold came from. Number one. Number two, okay, it has these like the Kina Bar security features to make sure that card is absolutely 100% authentic. There's no question to its purity and its authenticity. That headache is completely far removed. No bank, no vault has to ever worry about it. I was blown away by that fact. The other fact is Karatbars can ship it directly to your house. You can have a gold in 1 gram, 2.5 grams, or 5 grams. Very small gold that you can have in your house, on yourself. Okay? A typical LBMA good delivery bar is 400 ounces. Where the heck are you going to hide a 400-ounce bar? Okay? But I can hide a whole bunch of Karatbars. I can keep it in my wallet. I can keep it on my person. I was blown away by that. I was blown away by the fact that if you don't want to ship to your house, you could have it vaulted in Stuttgart, Germany. It's a great location. If you want to liquidate it, they can sell it off and liquidate it and wire you the money directly to your Karatbars MasterCard, where you're paid on. It's a beautiful, powerful flexibility. So I thought to myself, what we're doing with large scale, with big players, is what Karatbars is doing for the average person on the street. And they make the price of gold so affordable. And folks, let me tell you something about the gold market, okay? The gold market is being artificially suppressed by Wall Street and all the bankers. They do this because they want to make sure that the currency that they're using looks legitimate. The currency is the dollar. That charade is about to end very soon because the Chinese, the Russians, the Indians, the rest of the world are buying up gold at a rapid clip. In other words, there's less gold now than ever before, and yet the price of gold is artificially held low simply because of financial fraud. But that fraud is soon going to come to an end because those who control the price, okay, is basically those who control the price. They're about to lose price control. Price control is going to move out of the west and back to the east, and when that price control does that, okay, you're going to see gold go to not the $1,200 or $1,100 an ounce right now. It's going to go to $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 an ounce very quickly and rapidly. And that is why China and Russia and India and the rest of the world are buying gold at a rapid clip. That is why I've been in precious metals for a while. That's why I'm behind Karatbars, because it's the only way. Look, folks, as an American, this is the only exploit you have. This is it.
Wow.
This is the only export you have.
That's a big statement. That's a really big statement because most people, some people are doing this as a business, guys, but you guys are not on a call from that perspective. You're on a call because most people don't own gold. Some people have even said, I got some stock in gold, and they actually are holding a certificate. And we know because we got the perspective of a gold miner on a call, as well as some people that worked in the stock market that say, listen, here's what we do. Let's say you own a couple of ounces of gold, and we send you out a certificate. Well, we may have sent out 100 certificates on that same amount of gold.
Yep.
The person who's actually holding the gold is the one who owns the gold. So please be educated and use the wisdom from this call, guys, to protect yourself. You can open up an online gold savings account without purchasing anything. You open up the account for free, completely free. You have a mechanism and some software, very high tech, that you get to manage and direct your own account. You can save gold by the week, by the month. It's up to you. You just want to make sure that you are not one of those individuals that are caught with your pants down when the dollar collapses and you don't have anything to buy food. One of the things that you mentioned is that someone was able to buy a home with 3 grams of gold. That is why we're doing this. We're not doing this from a speculative investment standpoint, buy low, sell high. You better get as much as you can right now at the price point that it is so that when it does reveal its true value, now you are holding something that you paid a little bit of money for that's worth a whole lot of money. This just makes sense. It doesn't matter what company you're part of. It doesn't matter what your occupational background is. None of that matters. This is not in competition to anyone. Guys, what we are offering is a simple solution for the masses of people, just like he said. The people that he was working with, it cost, I believe you said, $150,000 just to open up an account. Was that correct?
Yep, correct. That's
so, guys, with this, you can open up an account for free. It doesn't cost you a dime to open up an account. You can move as little as a gram of gold, ladies and gentlemen. And right now, a gram of gold is going for about $60 a gram. Guys, that's somebody weekly Starbucks had it. You have to be wise enough to say, listen, I'm not going to worry about being afraid right now. Let me use wisdom and take action. Let me just share with this with them, and then I'm going to ask you 2 more questions, V, before we close out. Guys, listen, we are not talking about you selling any product. We're talking about you protecting your wealth. We don't sell anything here. We simply take our declining dollars, guys, that's really not worth the paper that it's printed on, and we protect ourselves by saving that money in gold. A lot of your team leaders are already doing it. No, they may not have exposed it to you because maybe they don't want you to look at this as a business opportunity. And you do whatever you need to do for you. I'm saying get your hands on some gold. Let me tell you what this market size is going to be, guys. This will be the largest market transfer in world history when $1.4 quadrillion of fiat paper money market transferring into gold globally, and Karatbars expands to just 1/3 of 1% of that market. We will be larger than all markets of health and wellness, weight loss, nutrition, water, food, juice, coffee, energy drinks, beauty, jewelry, gifting, shopping portal services, penny auctions, advertising, cars, shoes, travel, and clothes all combined. We are talking about our product is money. And all we simply do is help people to open up online gold savings accounts and transfer dollars into gold so that they can protect their family, their finances, and their future. Let me ask you something, V. Just from your opinion, how much, because we have people that are acting, and I'm not advising anyone to do anything. Let me put a disclaimer out here. I am not a financial advisor. I work in finances, but I cannot advise you on what to do. I can only tell you what people are doing, okay? We have a lot of people who are moving money from 401ks and IRAs because they just want to control it. They lost a lot of money back in 2008. We've even had some people on a call that have recommended a certain percentage of it that they should move into gold. What is your opinion of how much money from a percent standpoint that people should be moving into gold?
I mean, right now the world is what's called a hard asset smash and grab. Okay, and what that simply means is the world's right now looking for hard assets like gold and silver. Okay, because they know what the real true value is. Most people, I'll tell people this: if you can get, I'm gonna throw it out there. I tell all my clients this: anywhere between 70 to 80%.
70 to 80% of their money should be in gold.
Absolutely, should be in precious metal. At this stage,
wow.
At this stage,
wow. So you're basically saying keep enough for responsibilities and liabilities, and protect yourself by putting your money in gold. Wow, that's really strong. Let me ask you this, V. You and I have had a private conversation, and we won't get into a lot of the things that we discussed. I can tell you guys he did a video or a call where he talked about, and this is on YouTube, he had a conversation with a 4-star general. And a lot of information was exposed to him about some things that we can see to unravel and unfold. And I'll be honest with you, it was a bit frightening. But I think the relief in that is, for number one, as a believer, guys, and you've ever read the book, the Bible, a lot of what you're seeing manifest and roll out when it's exposed to you properly, it looks a lot like what we read in the Bible. And so please understand that this is what's happening, and you have to protect yourself. But if you decided to leave the country, okay, just because, let's say, you wanted to make sure it was safe and some things kind of got hectic here in the U.S., where would you go?
Right now, if I want to stay in the Western Hemisphere, I'd go to Panama. Why
Panama?
Well, Panama is being set up by the elites to be the Switzerland of the Western Hemisphere. Like, for instance, Switzerland is the Switzerland of in the European hemisphere. Or is the Switzerland of the Asian hemisphere, so to speak, the whole Asian region. And Panama, when you look at Panama, look at, number one, you have over 500 multinational corporations that have been moving their headquarters there, number one. Number two, they're expanding their canal, which is going to bring in $5.5 billion per year into the country, a country of about 3 million people. Number one. Number two, their corporate laws are awesome. I mean, there's really nothing in terms of tax. The way the country's set up right now is how America was in the 50s in terms of its morals and values, number one. In terms of infrastructure, my God, I dare anybody to look up Panama City, Panama, on a Google Images, and it looks like Miami. It looks like Miami and Dubai got together and had a love child.
You're right. I agree.
Yeah, and I've been there. The people are nice. Healthcare is excellent. You got Johns Hopkins University Healthcare there. For a lot of the American expats, they want to send their kids to college. Well, American universities there, University of Florida, University of Miami's there. You got some top colleges there. There's a lot of opportunities, man. In terms of schooling, they actually teach their kids real schooling, math, science, reading, literature, things that are important, not how to put a condom on a cucumber.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
so what about the people who may be thinking, oh my goodness, Panama sounds like a dangerous place. It's right near Colombia. Is it safe?
It's safe. I mean, the drug trade, you don't even notice it, and I'll tell you this why. The Colombians, when they run the drugs, they're running it through the coast. They're trying to move the drugs as quickly as possible to who? To Tío del Norte, the uncle in the north, which is the U.S. The U.S. is the destination. So all the violence and stuff, you don't see. There's none of that in Panama. The Panamanians are, cracking down on. They're doing a great job cracking down on the drug trade over there. And most of the drug trade is through the sea, and it's through the air. It's through the air routes and the shipping route. The drugs go through. Going through a land route is the most riskiest and cost prohibitive. So a lot of the cartels don't run their drugs that way. And number one, number two. You don't even notice it. You don't even know that that's happening. It's like, you go to you're more aware of the drug trade in Miami than you are in Panama.
No, listen, V, I totally get it. I'm from New Orleans, and I promise you, it wasn't until I moved away from the city that crime seemed to be more alarming. In the city, we were used to a few murders a day, and so I could remember going back home and asking, like, how is it out here? And it was like, oh, it's not that bad. Maybe 3-4 people a week died, got killed or whatever that was reported. And that wasn't that bad because you're used to 3 or 4 a day. And I'm like, 3 or 4, or whatever the case may be. So I totally get what you're saying. I listened to a video, and I want to say, and it could have been a year or so ago, I want to say you mentioned Chile. Was that a location for you at one point, and now it's not?
At one point it was. We started a project down there, just hit a lot of the bureaucracy. We got tied up in a lot of bureaucratic, red tape. That's another reason why we went to Panama, because you don't have the bureaucracy there. I had a buddy of mine who started a school. And he went to the government and said, okay, we want to start a school. And he's expecting all this bureaucratic red tape, and the Secretary of Education is like, go ahead, start a school. So he started a school. I mean, my God, how simple was that? You don't have any of that bureaucratic nightmare. And the other thing is this, Dr. China, is this. Panamanians are used to seeing foreigners. They have 150 years of seeing Americans there. Most Panamanians have American DNA from soldiers who were stationed there for God knows how long, you know? They're used to foreigners. When you go to Panama, you're not the gringo on the hill, you know? They're used to it.